This will make sense. Today, I went and spoke at a high school summer school program about being an author and being a publisher. Most of the questions that the students had were about my role as a publisher and what all that entails. And one of the things that struck me as I was speaking with them was that they had the same questions as a group of adults that I spoke to at for a local writers group recently about the way the publishing industry works, about what is the process from going from, typing the end at the end of your document to being able to see that book on the shelves of your local bookstore. There's a lot. That's a huge question, right? And one of the kind of intimidating facts that I had to share with these adults especially is that by the time you get to typing the end, you're already behind the eight ball. In the modern publishing world, there were things you should have been doing before. There were things you should have known before about the way the industry works, not just about how to go from once upon a time to the end. There are about 1 million things you need to know to get from once upon a time to the end. And the wonderful thing about you is that you already know 95% of those things. You know how story works. It's in your bones. It's in your DNA. The challenging thing is the other 5% you don't know, and you don't know which 5% of those 10,000 things you don't know. And so getting from once upon a time to the end is very challenging for a lot of folks, and they still manage to get to the end often and then don't know what comes next. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking maybe I should do a series of videos, because I don't think I can do it in just one video that explains the publishing industry, the multiple paths of the publishing industry. And I was sharing with these students that the publishing industry is remarkably opaque, especially for a field where ostensibly we're communicators, right? We are trying to spread the word about books. We are trying to get books into people's hands. And yet the way that we do that, the way that we go from, writing the end to that book being on the shelf is invisible to writers. It's invisible to readers. That's very challenging. So I thought maybe I would do that, and I would share that with all of you. And but I don't know if there's interest in it. I don't know if you want to hear that from me. And also, I think part of that is maybe because I think some people don't even recognize that it could be valuable to them. So let me back up a little bit and say you are a part of the audience for such a video, even if you don't realize it. A lot of students that I've worked with over the years don't think of themselves as writers. And that's unfortunate. Because in the modern literate world, you are a reader and you are a writer. We don't think of it often in that way because we've been taught to think of reading and writing in these very, very specific ways. First of all, we can't identify even or agree upon what is a text. And so I would encourage you, first and foremost, broaden your definition of a text. When you are watching a film, you are analyzing the way that that story works on film with skills that are necessary for reading, right? You are a reader of that text. And you can improve upon those skills. You can become a more critical viewer of film, right? When you go to see a play, you are analyzing that text. So as an audience member, you're a reader. Because we limit reading down to, printed words on paper, we change people's definition of what it means to be a reader in this really unnatural way. That is not the only way to read. Listening to an audiobook? Absolutely reading. Braille? Absolutely reading. Reading with your fingertips. I can't read that way, but I admire people who can, right? So if we expand that understanding of reading to include that audiobook, to include that book that's on Braille, then why would we limit it to something that is novel length, right? If you're watching a film, you are taking in this story that was a script, and then there were actors involved and producers and directors and all these other people who contributed to bringing that script to screen, right? But why would we limit ourselves then to something that's 2 hours long, right? That came out of a screenplay. We already said it doesn't have to be a novel, it doesn't have to be a screenplay. Well, if it includes something that maybe doesn't have a script, and you can still employ those same critical skills, you can read that text, then guess what? The video you're watching right now, you're analyzing, using some of those reading skills. If what I tell you is out of order, and you're like, I don't like the way he didn't grab my attention at the beginning, isn't that what you might say about a novel? That's a reading skill, right? So you are absolutely a reader. In the same way, we have unnaturally limited the definition of writer. And so I would often have students who would say, oh, I'm not a writer. Yeah, except they spend all day texting their friends. You are absolutely a writer. Every single person in the comments, look down this video. All those people in the comments, they are using the written word to communicate. You are a writer. Now, that doesn't mean you're a novelist or an aspiring novelist, right? Those are distinct, right? Do you want to write something that is book length? Do you want to write a story? Maybe you want to be an author because you've got an interesting story to tell, but it's a true story. Then you're not an aspiring novelist, but you've got a book in you. You know, you're an aspiring author, or at least a potential author of something that's book length. But maybe you want to write a screenplay or a play or a graphic novel, which, you know, I will always belovedly think of as a comic book, right? Maybe that's what's in you, and you've got a great idea for something. And comic books don't all have to be about superheroes. There are fantastic ones that aren't. So maybe you've got a great idea and you would want to present that in a different way. It would still be read, right? Somebody would still be using those reading skills. You need to broaden those in order to understand that the value for you of understanding the way the publishing industry works is similar to understanding the way the film industry works, so that you can be an informed viewer of film. When you're saying, how did this get made? Why does this movie exist? Or, why can't this be turned into a film? Understanding the industry is helpful, right? So, regardless of whether or not you want to write a book, understanding the way the publishing industry works may be of value to you. So if that's something you'd like me to share in a kind of multi-part form, if that's something you'd be interested in, please let me know. Put something in the comments, let me know that that's something you'd be interested in. Now, this is actually somewhat symbolic here. Not just the box within a box. Although there might be something to explore there. No. So, on my way back from speaking with these students, I had to zip by the post office. And this is not the right thing for this job. But it works. So, I had to zip by the post office to pick up a bunch of large packages. Very normal for a publisher. My post office folks know me. Because I've got to go in and get boxes of books. One of the things I had to pick up this time was this. What is this? Well, we're going to see how much putting together this requires. Looks like there's no putting together required. So, I had to go to the post office to pick up a device, a tool, that is used for carrying large boxes, only it was in a large box. This is a dolly for carrying large boxes. So I was in the post office getting a bunch of large boxes, one of which was a dolly, so that I can, in the future, use this to carry large boxes to live events and that kind of thing. I'm not sure if that technically qualifies as irony. It's one of those things that verges on irony. Not tragic irony, maybe not even comic irony. Somebody in the comments, let me know. Is that situational irony? But yes, getting a box so that in the future you will have a dolly to use to carry large boxes. The reason I think that that might be a visual aid that could be useful in the context of this particular video is that a lot of the things that are difficult to explain about the publishing industry are going to seem similarly counterintuitive, right? They are going to be things where you're going to say, but wait, the document is right here in my computer. I can just, toss this thing up into the world, in a handful of clicks, and it will be a book. And that's true. You could hit print on your printer, and it would be a book, right? It would be, then you have to figure out how to bind it, I suppose, and then it would be a book. But if you want to go from the story that you wrote to having it be on the store in your bookshelf and having somebody purchase that and take it home and actually consume it, there's a whole lot that goes into that that you may not have thought of. Why is this publisher showing up at the post office to pick up a dolly to carry around boxes of books? There's a lot more involved in the industry than just putting that document onto paper. And in fact, your publisher is not your printer. That's one of the things that I'll explain. So if that's something you might be interested in learning more about, please put something in the comments, and I can hopefully demystify an industry that is unnecessarily labyrinthine and opaque. Speaking of which, one of the questions that I don't get enough, or at least that I have not heard yet, and I think is a really good follow-up, is, okay, but why? Why is it so labyrinthine and opaque? And I think there's a very interesting answer to that question. So, if that's one you're interested in, if you're wondering why is it that it's not more straightforward to figure out how to go from document to book on a shelf, why would it take a series of videos? Put that in the comments as well, because I certainly have thoughts. I can explain why it is maybe we're not comfortable sharing certain things with the public about the way that the industry works that I think you will find interesting. And not just find interesting, here's the key thing that I want you to get. They will help you in the writing process. The writing process, not just the marketing of your book, not just the how to get from the end to the bookshelf. Understanding more about the way the industry works will change the product itself. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That doesn't have to be venal. That doesn't mean that you're, writing something that is inferior. Learning how to write for your reader is a good thing. If you don't care about your reader, I say this to writers all the time. If you don't care about your writer, keep a diary. But if you do care about your reader, and you ought to, I believe you ought to care about your reader, then learning about the industry is about learning how to connect with readers who are reading very different ways. The agent is not reading like the publisher. The agent is not reading like the editor. The publisher is not reading quite like the reader. They're all trying to figure out what the reader would like. But those people are also your readers. And so how do you take that into account and allow that to be part of your process and think of those folks as your prospective readers as well, so that you can get from the end to the bookstore shelf? If that's something you'd be interested in learning more about, let me know. I can make a whole series of videos about that, and I think that those will be valuable for some folks. If you know someone who is currently working on a book, who is in what we call the querying trenches. So they are querying and they're trying to say, what do I do with this project? I'm struggling. Please tag them in the video, in the comments, and that way I would love to hear from them. And then give me some questions. What is it you want to know about the publishing industry that will make this more useful? One of the things that I'll tease that you should consider is, if you are one of those authors and you're in the querying trenches and you're getting kind of scammy stuff, I would love to do an entire video about that, because there are scams out there that are trying to help you promote your indie publishing project, or that are posing as traditional publishers who are not. And so if that's something you would be interested in, I could do an entire video or series of videos about the kinds of scams you may be subject to and how to watch out for those. So if that would be something you'd be interested in, put it in the comments, let me know, and share this with folks. Of course, subscribe so that you see when those videos come back, and support Not a Pipe Publishing. Buy our books. Come to Pride here in Portland if you're in the greater Portland area. We'll be there this weekend, carrying boxes of books on a new dolly, and love to have you there and get to meet you. But even if you live further away and you're thinking, hey, maybe this is a publishing company I'd like to query, follow us there. Check out our stuff. It's actually one of the things I'll talk about in the videos, being aware of who you're querying. So check out our books, see if we would be the right home for yours potentially. Because if you've got the next, great science fiction or fantasy or romantasy or, horror fantasy or whatever, that's our wheelhouse. But we have, or poetry collection, right? We've got a lot. So check our stuff out. See if we would be potentially a good home for your work. And let me know if you want me to explain more about how the publishing industry works. Okay, I just realized that we have another layer of irony here in that I had a visual aid that I was going to use to be a demonstration of the irony of the publishing industry being unclear about how it works, and it arrived and was already assembled, which is the exact opposite of the way the publishing industry works, where there is a lot of assembly required. So, yeah, that was accidental irony upon irony. Publishing, assembly required.